Hello YouTubers. This video is going to be about how the Eye of God, which you're looking at right now, the Helix Nebula, the eye on the ground, which I'll show you here, well, in just a little bit, and the Freemasons and 9/11 and Pearl Harbor may all have something to do with each other. This is obviously the Helix Nebula. This is different images and different wavelengths. Many refer to it as the Eye of God. This eye seems to have an alignment like I showed in the first video with this eye on the ground, located in Mexico, north of Guadalajara. You can see where we are at. Anyhow, in 1723, due to the Earth, it lined up exactly, the Eye of God, the Helix Nebula, this thing, lined up with, this guy, exactly on October 4th, 1723, and that was the year that the Freemasons drew up their Constitution. Anyhow, I go into that on my first video. You can kind of see it looks like there's a pyramid here, turned upside, right side up. You have to get rid of these extra lines, but actually just go back to my previous video and you'll see there's kind of a change in the color of the ground here versus over here. It's a lighter color here, it's darker here. There's some roads that go across here, and I just drew some lines that kind of superimposed where these things were. Also appears to be a line going down right here, which kind of corresponds to how the pyramid looks on the dollar bill. Anyway, enough of that. So if you understand precession and how the Earth wobbles on its axis a little bit, every 26,000 years it does a full wobble. When it does that, it's going to change how the stars line up. Well, these stars seem to be moving with the Earth, but as the Earth moves a little bit up and down, the stars, imagine if they stayed stationary and the Earth was just moving here, it'll change their alignment with things. And so what's key here is to understand, if we drew a line from the North Pole down to this eye and then kept going down here, as time goes by, the Helix Nebula, which is actually in here's Aquarius, here's Aquarius right here. Helix Nebula is in the thigh of Aquarius. When, let's imagine it was out here somewhere, and you drew a line from the Helix Nebula straight through the center of the Earth, it would pop out through here in Mexico, and as the Earth wobbles a little bit on its every 26,000 years, it's going to change the alignment of that line from the Helix Nebula to the Earth. Now, as the Earth spins, of course, it's going to pop out in other places. Okay? But once it crosses this north-south meridian line here that corresponds to the eye on the ground, we can start taking little measurements here. So what I've done is, in the 1700s it was up here, and during the event of Pearl Harbor it would have lined up down here. This was 1941, and at this time the Helix Nebula is just rising over the horizon. So if you were during the attack of Pearl Harbor at 7:55 a.m., you were standing here. This is local time in Mexico, so it's 7:46 in Hawaii. You can see the Helix Nebula is just starting to come up. The reason I went to 7:46 is because there's something else interesting going on right now at this exact second. And at that location, it is perfectly noon. See the 180 degrees here? Turn the sunlight on, it's perfectly noon. Turn the landscape on so you guys can see what's going on here. It's perfectly noon, and in the east side, to the east, the Helix Nebula is just about to come over the horizon. Go up to actual time of the attack, which was 7:55, 10:55 this time, and we go to the Helix Nebula. If I still, I don't have it selected. I changed it. Well, I just know it's in here. Come on, let's go find it. It would be right there. Bingo. It's 1 degree above the horizon. In my location where I live quite a ways from mountains, and the mountains are at about 2 degrees above the horizon. So this is right on the horizon, guys. It's not very high. So at basically noon on December 7th, 1941, at this location, and bear with me, there's a lot more going on here. At this location, the Helix Nebula was just rising. Now, what's really important about that, in December 7th, 1941, later that day, earlier that day, okay, during the attack, the actual location where the Helix Nebula would have lined up would have come straight out here. If you're standing here and looking towards the east, you'll see it rising in the east. Okay? And it's almost directly noon. So the sun would be where we are looking down. Helix Nebula is this way. And if you draw a line through the center of the Earth from the Helix Nebula, it would have popped out here. Now, when the Earth was back in this position, and the Helix Nebula was lining up, well, I'm sorry, I got the tilt all wrong. The Helix Nebula was lining up through here. It would have popped out at that point on this north-south meridian line, which is south of the eye. And the reason that's critical to know is because there's an interesting distance here. From this location here, along this purple line, which takes us to Washington, D.C., that line that goes right to the front steps of the Capitol building is 2,001 miles. Actually, it's 2,001.0911 miles. Exactly 2,000.0911 miles. So we have 9/11, 2001. I'll show you where it goes on the curve. And what's interesting is when I found this, it kind of freaked me out. I found this on August 27th, and I went to go get my pizza out of the oven that was cooking, and I looked at the clock, and it was 9:11 p.m. I came back and wrote the note at 9:13. So I was going, oh, that's kind of an interesting coincidence. Anyhow, for you, those who haven't really ever looked at Washington, D.C., do you see something there? Does this look like an eyeball, not an eye? Does it look kind of like an owl, maybe? Do you think the owl kind of looks like maybe he's sitting on top of a pyramid here? Anyway, that's a whole nother story for another thing. All right, so let's get you back orientated. These lines that are coming from that location that's south of the eye, where the Helix Nebula lined up during the date of Pearl Harbor, that are 2,001 miles long. So we have 9/11 and 1941 Pearl Harbor coming together. Both had about 3,000 people get killed. Lines up right here to this point, which is along this north-south line along the sidewalk, and is centered on the building. The reason I use that, because you could say these are the first steps to the Capitol building right here, but these actually stick out a little further, and the very first step you take is actually onto the sidewalk, then you go up these steps. So I thought that would be a good spot to center everything on, and I got it as close as I could, and these are the size of people, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's just the beginning. We got a whole lot more going on here. Now notice these purple lines here. They go, well, we had two here. One's going to the center of the Capitol building. Now, it looks like it's off, but it's really closer than you think, because the Capitol building has the images being taken from the side, and it's not exactly symmetrical in here because it's kind of like slanted over the side. So you have to kind of measure it based off where it would be on the ground. Anyway, so you got this line. Okay, these lines here, I forget this other pink one for now. This line, the purple line here, is the one that goes to the Helix Nebula, the point south of the Helix Nebula, or south of the eyeball on the ground that lines up with the point south of the eyeball that lines up with the Helix Nebula on December 7th, 1941, where it's about noon and the sun is rising and all that stuff, but also was the crossing point where earlier in the day the Helix Nebula actually crossed. Boy, that's hard to explain. Anyway, so you got this line goes to this front steps here, and this line goes to the center of the building. They're pretty much, it doesn't matter, but this is important to find out about right here. I'll show you why. This one here goes to the World War II memorial right in the middle of the fountain. Okay, we're talking about World War II here. And this goes to the Pentagon, and it goes to right where, of course, the flight or the Pentagon got struck. You can see by the memorial, everything lines in this direction. If you look at some pictures of the 9/11 Pentagon memorial, this will guess will be a night shot. You can see these are the direction as it went. The memorial shows as it went right into the building. Okay, so I don't think it was a plane. I think it was probably something else. But anyways, that aside, we'll get into that later, or maybe somewhat. Okay, so interesting enough, these lines, these purple lines, actually go over here to where the Helix Nebula would have actually come out of the Earth. Remember, let's set this back up for you. Got the Helix Nebula over here. During the attack in Hawaii, 7:55 a.m. here. It's 10:55 a.m. here. It's about solar noon here. You have, that's a whole nother discussion. Noon is not always, the sun's not always exactly straight up at noon. The Earth's orbit is elliptical. The sidereal noon is a whole different, if you go watch some videos on that. That one's, it's not always noon. The sun isn't always exactly straight up at noon. Anyways, so you have the Helix Nebula here. It's 10:55, almost 11 o'clock here. 7:55 here, the attack is happening, and the alignment from the Helix Nebula comes right out through here. And if you draw a line straight across here, crosses a point here in the red line, which is where Flight 93 crashed. So I'm going to show you that in a second. Just I want to reiterate here that this is the location. If you're standing on this location, the Helix Nebula is rising. It's noon, and the Helix Nebula would line up here. Earlier in the day, when the Helix Nebula was when the Earth was like this, the Helix Nebula lined up with this point that's south of that eye. And then it's 2001.0911 miles from here to Washington, D.C. Okay, now let's go look at the crash site. This is, back up one more time, we got where the Helix Nebula pops out at 7:55 a.m. when Pearl Harbor is being attacked, right over here. That's where it comes out. We drew a line across the United States, straight to Washington, D.C., to the three locations I showed you: the Capitol Building, the World War II Memorial, Capitol Building, World War II Memorial, and the Pentagon, where the Pentagon got struck. Okay, so we take those three lines, or kind of four, and we back up over here to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and voila. This is the location of the memorial. You can see this is where the crash was, Flight 93 Memorial crash site. This is the memorial park. It's a curved road. It looks like a crescent moon. Interesting. Anyways, so this line that goes to the Washington Monument, World War II Memorial, makes a tangent line on this memorial here. Okay, the one that goes to the Pentagon. Okay, now right here, let's back up and go to this. Look at this. This is where the crash site was. This is where the crater was, where there was no plane. Anyhow, if there was a plane there, not much of it was left, and probably a bunch of debris was elsewhere, so there's a whole other story. Don't believe the official story, people. You got to look into that. Anyways, if you look at the length of this line here, it's 0.93 miles, and it's perpendicular to the line from the Pentagon to the Helix Nebula on December 7, 1941 at 7:55 a.m. Well, let's back up so you can see that line. Okay, there's the purple line, goes right through there. This one is, so remember, this is Flight 93, and we have 0.93 miles. Okay, now we go over here. This line that went to the Capitol building, this dark purple one here, If I get the right, there's two lines in here. If I get the right one, let's see, hopefully get the yellow one. Yep, it's 9,300 feet from the crash site to that line, approximately. Yeah, it says 9,301. But you get the idea, it's another 93. Whether you're measuring ground length or map length, that does make a difference. If you understand Google Earth, that's something to think about. So you got three interesting circumstances here that are all pointing to Flight 93 that correspond to the point in the ocean. Now we got another line here. Let's take a look at this one. This is from the eye itself on the ground to Flight 93. Measurement is, well, let's look at miles. 1,903. You got like something like a 93 again. That's 1,903 miles. And that one actually takes you to the eye itself, not south of the eye. There's the eye. This one, the other one's taking you to south of the eye. Okay, some other interesting lines I thought would be fun to look at. This eye on the ground is 7,998 miles, actually, depending on which line I'm looking at, to Mount Sinai. If you know where Moses got the Ten Commandments and all that, a lot of people think it's here. Actually, it's probably up here. But depending on which line I'm looking at, I clicked on the wrong one. Let's click on the light blue one here. That one's 8,000 miles. 8,001. The thing is, when I measured it earlier, it comes out to like 7,997 point something miles for map length and 8,000.53 miles for ground length, which will end up rounding it up to 8,001 miles. So that's interesting that came out like that to the where Mount Sinai is. Okay, let's take a look at some other things so many people can see that this is indeed where Mount Sinai probably was. You look over here in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian government has fenced off an area here. A lot of people believe is the Golden Calf altar. Let's see if we can get a better picture here from somebody. See, there's hieroglyphs of calves. And they fenced it off. There's the fence around it. And you can see it goes around this whole thing right here. So there's evidence that that's where, and there's some campsites and a whole bunch of other weird stuff around here. I don't know exactly. I don't want to click on pictures all day and bore you guys. But anyways, so there's some stuff there, and this is maybe where Moses struck the rock. This particular rock where the water came out and all that. Anyways, if you know the story. This is probably where Ron Wyatt discovered, I guess he discovered that. I mean, they already knew about it, but was kind of brought it into public attention that was where the real Mount Sinai was. He also did, put some submarines underground here, under the water here, and found some corals that had attached themselves with what looked like the axle of chariot wheels, where the Egyptian army had gotten crushed under the water. And they actually had some photos of some chariot wheels there. And this area right here is sort of a gentle slope through the sea, through the, what do you call the Gulf of Aqaba? Anyway, so this would be an easier area to go down and walk back up if you're pulling wagons and things. If you were trying to do it over here, well, it'd be much steeper. As you can see, these are, well, it's more mountainous terrain in there than it is off that nice flat beach. That flat beach was nice and flat, and here the slopes down further, and it's steeper when you get on this other side. So it was kind of like in the right location. Also, you can see they'd been entangled in the land. If the Egyptian army was coming down this canyon, pillar of fire could have been there. The Israelites could be out here, really don't have anywhere to go because there's just mountains all the way around, and so they kind of look like they were toast. But anyways, it didn't work out that way. So another thing that's interesting is this line here, this orange one, that goes back to the eye. Is 7,770 miles. Well, maybe. well, it's 771. I've got two lines in there again. But it goes to where Elijah's cave was, this monastery. Let's see. Maybe the purple one. Let's see, is that going to show us the right number? That's still 771. You get the ground length and a map length. It might have been the map length that it was 7,770 miles away. But anyways, this is where Napoleon, he received some help, and when he was wandering around. And they've got a monument here for Napoleon, and it's, of course, a pyramid, and got a capstone. So we got pyramids running all over the place, and of course, so that's an interesting 770 miles. And then if you measure this line, which actually goes down to the pyramids, it's 300 miles to that one. Let's see, and that comes from this pyramid and goes straight down to the ones in Egypt. Well, let's back up a little more. Whoa. Back up a lot. You can imagine how hard it is to be exactly right on this stuff. Okay, here's the other pyramid like what we're talking about. So I didn't go to the, again, this is from the side. The center of it, if you measure across from the base, would be right here. This is a skewed view of the pyramid because we're looking at it from the side. Okay, so well, we got some interesting numbers. We got 8,000 miles to Mount Sinai. We got 7,770 miles to Elijah's cave. I'll show you inside the church here, or the monastery. Let's go take a look here. Maybe picture? Where should I go? Well, let's go inside. Let's just go inside. Alright. Okay, if you look around, we got all kinds of light. Kind of light there. A light in the artwork. This almost looks like an obelisk. Light. That's a pathway, I guess. And I'm not saying any, more light here. I'm not saying there's some kind of big conspiracy or something, but it's just interesting how this works out. Anyways, this is where the cave is, where they believe that Elijah was. And of course, got light up here and the sun and all that. So, kind of makes you wonder, if you get into the sun god worship stuff, what's really going on. Anyway, so we got a pyramid. Let's see, what else do I need to say? I think that's about it. I'm going to leave you guys with a video that just talks about, well, I'll put it this way. My mother told me that my grandfather said that when he was in college, that some guy came and did some kind of talk, and the guy held up some papers in his hand and said that he had the plans that the Japanese were going to use to attack Pearl Harbor with in his hands. And that was before the attack of Pearl Harbor. So it's kind of one of those things that makes you wonder, well, did they let it happen? And what I'm going to show you next is a little bit about 9/11. If you want to really get into 9/11, you can study how the buildings collapsed and all that, and you'll find out it probably was a controlled demolition. But I think there's interesting coincidences going on here that have something to do with the Helix Nebula, the Freemasons in 1723, and how this lined up in 1723 with the Helix Nebula and the eye on the ground, and this eye here looks like a pyramid. And then how later, as Precession changed the axis of the Earth, or the tilt of the axis of the Earth, down in 1941, the Helix Nebula was crossing back across here. And from there, it's 2,001 miles to Washington, D.C., 0.0911, so it's a 9/11, 2001. And how, in the PNAC agreement, they said we needed a new Pearl Harbor. Well, go ahead and watch this, guys, and tell me what you think. I'm going to pull it up here. If it'll start. There we go. You can go get this on YouTube yourself. You're not getting any audio.
after me. I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly...
When George W. Bush took office in 2000, he brought with him Vice President Dick Cheney, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and Deputy Secretary for Defense Paul Wolfowitz, all of whom had served together previously in the administrations of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Paul Wolfowitz, in particular, had long been recognized as the intellectual force behind a radical neoconservative fringe of the Republican Party. For years, Wolfowitz had been advancing the idea that the United States should reconsider its commitments to international treaties, international law, and multilateral organizations such as the United Nations. A radical plan for American military domination first surfaced during the administration of George H.W. Bush. In 1992, Paul Wolfowitz, working in the Department of Defense, was asked to write the first draft of a new national security strategy, a document entitled the Defense Planning Guidance. The most controversial elements of what would later come to be known as the Wolfowitz Doctrine were that the United States should dramatically increase defense spending, that it should be willing to take preemptive military action, and that it should be willing to use military force unilaterally, with or without allies. This new reliance on military force was necessary, according to Wolfowitz, to prevent the emergence of any future or potential rivals to American power, and to secure access to vital resources, especially Persian Gulf oil. Out of power during the Clinton presidency, Wolfowitz and his colleagues affiliated themselves with a number of influential conservative think tanks. In 2000, they would craft yet another proposed national security strategy, this one published by a right-wing think tank calling itself the Project for the New American Century. At its core, the document revived the Wolfowitz Doctrine. It called on the United States to increase the military budget by up to $100 billion, to deny other nations the use of outer space, and to adopt a more aggressive and unilateral foreign policy that would allow the United States to act offensively and preemptively in the world. The elimination of states like Iraq figured prominently in this grand vision. But even these hardline conservatives knew that the Wolfowitz Doctrine was likely too radical to win the support of the foreign policy establishment, their own Republican Party, and the American people. In their defining document, written in September of 2000, a full year before 9/11, they acknowledged that the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent, in their own chilling words, some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. 1 year later, that event would arrive.
Okay, so what you got there is a lot of people believe that the inside job, that it was an inside job, and that it was connected to Pearl Harbor in the sense that they let Pearl Harbor happen, which brought us into World War II. And so we're going to either let or make, I think it was an inside job, make 9/11 happen so that we can get into another war. What's interesting is we have maybe something going on here in the geography where God is showing us some signs. One other thing here that's interesting about the location of the eye, look right down here in the corner at the elevation. Now, when did Pearl Harbor happen? 1941. What day? December 7th, almost 1942. Watch as I bring the mouse into the middle of the eye. It goes to 1942 meters right here. Watch that. 1941, 1940. Just to show you how big this area is. Pull it up, guys. I'm looking for it here. I just have to tell you rather than show you. There we go. If you put a football field on here, you can put 2 football fields across that eye. That's how big the area is. So it's a pretty flat area, considering you go that far and only go up a meter or so. December 7th is almost 1942, so depending on how accurate Google Earth is, who knows, it might even be perfectly accurate. It might be whatever percentage December 7th, 1941 is of a year, like, what, 0.93? I bet it's 0.93. Oh, man. That's interesting to look into. Someone could do some math, take December 7th, how many days it is to December 7th, and divide 365 into that, and see if it comes out to 0.93. And so anyways, yeah, so it's almost, December 7th almost equals the next year, 1942. So it might actually be something going on there. Anyways, thank you very much to you guys. We'll go ahead and watch the first video. If you haven't watched the second, it kind of tells you a little bit about how this lined up. I've got a lot more going on. It tells you a little bit about the lake here, and the statue of Jesus stamping on a pyramid and all that sort of stuff. How all this connects together. If I were to really turn this all on so you guys could see what's really going on, and just play it here a little bit with you. This is what happens when you study this stuff too much. You can see if the computer can even do it. It's trying to do something. I probably should cut the video off right now. Oh, it's not going to be able to do it. I've got lines going all over the place that show all kinds of things. We got the last blood moon's going to be right down here where the cursor is. There's Chelyabinsk meteorite points right at it. All kinds of things. So I've been studying lots of stuff here, and I got spaghetti bowl on this planet. You wouldn't believe the interesting things that happen and how they may be tied to things on Earth. Anyway, so I'll plan to do some more videos in the future for you guys. Obviously, this isn't looking too good, so we're going to cut this video off right here. Alright, thanks. Have a great day.